This is the CreaseCast.
Yesterday, I installed a Fire Stick on my TV, and
nice.
I set up all these apps, and I was like, man, I should have done this a long time ago. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna hop on the computer and try and find one to start streaming TV, because I really want to not have to rely on illegal streaming for TV services. There's got to be a package or something where I can get live sports games or live television channels or whatever. I couldn't find anything, so I was like, you know what? I have a feeling I'm going to be busy at work tomorrow, which I was. So it probably makes sense that I do the expansion draft notes, because I feel like there's a lot to get into. And if I don't have it laid out, it's going to be the messiest episode we've ever done. So yeah, last night I started at I don't know, right now we're recording at 5:00 on a Tuesday. Welcome everybody to episode 131 of the CreaseCast. It's going to be a big one. It's going to be a long one. Hopefully not, though, because we don't want to take too much of your time. By the time this episode is done being played in your speakers, the expansion draft is going to be begun. Happens 5:00 Pacific on Wednesday, July 21st. All the trades that have been tied up and sworn to secrecy will be unveiled. It's going to be hype as shit, man. I am really excited for it. It was great having trade deadline number 2 on Saturday, out of nowhere.
It was better. It was better than the regular trade deadline. We wish the trade deadline was more like that. Every year we hype it like it's going to be, and then it never is. This time around, it actually was. There were so many just wild trades going on, and some of which we just don't even have the time to give a full in-depth look at, the fact that the Islanders gave a bunch of stuff to the Coyotes for nothing. I had that in the notes.
So,
you do? Okay.
So for everyone, what we're going to do is we both drafted our expansion teams. What we're going to do is we're going to go alphabetically through each team, talk about our picks for that team, and get into any of the discussion that we can get into for that team. If there's anything, there's some teams where it's there's nothing to say, like the Anaheim Ducks. There's so little available, so little they did, that it's just an easy discussion. And we're primarily Canucks.
We're Canucks podcasters, right? So there are, I don't think it's stunning to say that, there are definitely lots of players on other teams that we don't know that much about.
Yeah.
We know a little bit about them. We definitely know their contract situations based on Cap Friendly, which was by the way, huge help for the shout out Cap Friendly for setting this stuff up for us to do this. But they're
not specifically us, by the way, not specifically for us. They just if you've never seen CapFriendly.com.
This episode is presented by Cap Friendly. I wish if they want to, they can sponsor us all they want. But no, this is everybody can go use their expansion draft tool while it's still there.
While it's still there, you got to do it now because, like I said, draft is tomorrow. So without further ado, why don't we just dive straight into it, because we're going to have a lot to cover here. I've got my expansion draft list. I've got my giant bottle of water. I've got a half-eaten bag of munchies next to me, so I'm good to go. Are you good to go, sir?
I've got a water bottle, which I always have for every show. I've got my giant glass of cold brew. This is actually...
What's that Reddit subreddit, or that subreddit? It's Hydro Homies or something, where it's people that only drink water.
Or they have you seen those big gym things where it's literally it's a gallon, where they're just I drink one of these every day, and then it's that's probably too much. I think you got, or you never know. I guess it depends on how hard you're working every single day. We're not. There's no such.
I got 1.5 liters here, and I drink this probably 9 or 10 times in a day.
Yeah, you do end up going through a lot more water than it looks like. And then I have I've got Elite Prospects up. Yeah, we're all ready to go. Right. I think here, and I've got my Seattle shirt because, as we all know, Cody, as a podcast, we decided that Cody is going to be protected. I have chosen to waive my no move. If I get plucked by Seattle, it sucks, but CreaseCast will continue without me. It's fine, Yes. It's just how it's a business. It's how it goes.
It's a living.
It's a living. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's get right into it then. the Anaheim Ducks, first team on the list alphabetically. They didn't make any moves over the weekend or before the roster freeze on Saturday.
Their one big move was acquiring Hayden Fleury at the actual trade deadline.
Yes,
from
like
Carolina.
Right.
Yeah, that was their one.
Yeah, correct. They did a preemptive move for the sake of like our stuff though. Like I mostly looked at I listed all the moves made prior to Saturday and like after that first trade deadline because most of the posturing by teams was done as expected by NHL GMs at the very last minute, which provided plenty of entertainment. So, Anaheim Ducks, no real trades outside of that Hayden Fleury one. Most of their team is really young and was kind of exempt from the expansion draft itself, so they didn't really have to worry about protecting anyone. Some of the notable exemptions included like IR players like Brian Kessler, which was kind of funny.
Is Patrick Eaves still on IR, or is he like officially out of contract? He must be at this point. He must be.
I'm pretty sure he's out of his contract at this point.
Right. Right, because they were both. I remember they were both on. They were both Kessler and Eaves were on LTR for a very long time, and it always kind of skewed how many games lost because they would literally have two guys.
Right, it would be like 166 or whatever just for two guys missing the entire season, and you'd be like, that can't be right. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so they protected Jacob Silverberg, Rickard Raquel, Troy Terry, Nicholas Delorier, Isaac Lund. Actually, I'm not going to read any of these.
You don't have to. People can find them themselves. Like if you want to bring up somebody who you find interesting, like I think something that was interesting that came out just today, specifically was Nick Delorier, who supposedly teams are very interested in acquiring because he's a big boy
he plays the big boy hockey.
Yes, he does, and specifically, I think there was some rumor about the Rangers being interested because of everything, particularly because of the whole Tom Wilson thing that happened last year, which is why they signed Barclay Goodrow to that contract.
Was that made official?
I don't know if it was made official.
I guess
we can look it up in the meantime.
Pause because so for those that don't know, when the roster freeze took effect on Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern, what happened was any teams that had pending negotiations with UFAs, they had to be put on hold until Wednesday when the expansion draft happens, because then that's when the Seattle Kraken's exclusive negotiating window closes with all pending UFAs. So they get all their one-on-one time with all the people that they, could be taking in this upcoming expansion draft. And basically they get to figure out whether they're even worth acquiring, because say they pick a UFA in the draft and the guy's like, no, I'm still testing the market. I have no interest in signing in Seattle. Then that might change what they go after from that specific team. So that's kind of how that works. So all media were basically telling the world that Barclay Goodrow was the guy for the New York Rangers, and basically contract was pending, but
something along the lines of 6 years at about $3.5 million. So committing the
We'll get into that more when we get into the New York Rangers section.
But but back to Nick Delorier, that was kind of, I guess, why he's under protection. I guess there are teams very interested in acquiring him, which is kind of why it's a bit of an odder pick than you might think. Who did you pick? Who are they taking?
I had no idea who to take because the players that they really had available were not that great, to be completely honest. You had Ryan Getzlaf, who's a UFA. You had Adam Henrique, who's a UFA in a couple of years, but he makes a shit ton of money. So I went with experienced right shot defenseman because I think a team like Seattle is going to want to load up on a specific position, and I think they might want to load up on right shot defensemen and then peddle them all afterwards in trades, or they might even be peddling them at the expansion draft itself. So I picked Kevin Shattenkirk. Figured he's got decent enough production. A lot of people wrote him off after his time in New York, and then he had a bit of a resurgence in Tampa, won a cup with them, and then moved on to Anaheim, which was one of the worst teams in the entire NHL. Didn't have a COVID outbreak, and they were just horrendous. So I was like, yeah, he put up pretty decent production as a 32-year-old, and I think he's still got a lot left in the tank, all things considered. So that's probably a decent pickup for your, second or third pair. What about you?
So I almost went in the defenseman category. I almost actually went for Hayden Fleury. He's younger guy. He's 25. Defense. It can play both sides of the blue line. A little bit on the more expensive side, but good. It's a decent flyer to take, just based on the fact that I think especially in this particular expansion draft, there's going to be quite a few good veterans available, and I think there are going to be a couple cases where you might be, just because there are so many veterans available, it might be in your best interest to start maybe taking a few of the younger guys instead, just because you want to try and you want to have an even amount of guys who can win right away, but also don't want to, but while still keeping an eye on the future. But that being said, I actually ended up going even more prospect-wise. I went with Alexander Volkov, left winger, 23, only comes with about a $700,000 cap hit. A lot of the decisions I made as well, I will preface by saying that I based them off of some of the things that Ron Francis has talked about in the last few days, specifically how cap space is the most important asset they have at this time. Obviously, they don't have they don't have any players other than one guy right now. But having cap space, especially in a league where you have a flat cap, is a huge asset. For you. So I think Seattle, especially for some of the teams that maybe don't have the best contract-wise guys, I think you're going to see them, the Kraken, go for some of the younger guys who are with controllable years as an RFA. And only come at like a cheap cap hit. So in this case, this is a guy making only $700K, and he's an RFA in 2022. That's controlled years you get out of him. So I think Volkov is who they're going to go with.
Yeah. So
I went Volkov.
Yeah, just so to explain my logic process behind my drafting, it's purely trying to find guys who are re-signed for next year, trying to avoid the number of UFAs, and it's specifically with the mindset of acquiring enough defensemen and goalies to slough them off during the expansion draft itself and acquire assets like Vegas did, with the sole purposes of a team that leaves them with like 20 million in cap space. Because as Francis said, and as you just said too, cap space was the premium here. And so if they can get a bunch of guys in this expansion draft and retain 50% on some of these guys who only have 1 year or 2 years left, you're basically doing deadline deals here and acquiring a bunch of assets for them. So that's going to pay off huge in dividends, whether that's in better players returned or more picks, more young players, like whatever it is, it's going to be like what they will love. So that's just my thought process behind it. So that gets us to our second team. So we're making good progress here. We're on team 2 out of 31.
Are you gonna say that before every team?
Yeah.
We're making good progress here.
Yeah.
3 hours later, we're still here. We're making good progress.
We're in the 12th hour here of our team. We're just on to getting onto the Boston Bruins.
Cody, the expansion draft already ended. It's tomorrow now.
It ended 3 days. Yeah, 3 days
yes.
ago. Okay, so Arizona Coyotes. They acquired your boy from San Jose, Joseph Coronar, as well as from the New York Islanders, Andrew Ladd, a 2021 second-round pick, a 2022 second-round pick, and a 2023 third-round pick, conditional that if Andrew Ladd plays 1 game for the Coyotes in 2022 or 2023. It's a very, very condescending condition. Just like, if you're Andrew Ladd, aren't you like, fuck you?
I mean, a little bit, but also guys have played in the NHL in about 2-3 years, so
yeah, but like he can still probably give you like 1 game. Like if you're,
he definitely could give the Coyotes 1 game.
Yeah, if you're Arizona, you're like, oh, we're gonna play him regardless, even if he's shit, because that's a free pick. That's a free second round pick.
Yeah,
all they have to do is slide him in 1 game. That's such a freebie. But anyway, This is one of the only deals in NHL history where there technically was zero return. They didn't, because most deals you have to include future considerations. This wasn't even that. This was Lou Lamoriello, GM of the year, being so cap-strapped that he gave up 3 very good quality picks for absolutely nothing just to dump a contract.
I kind of wish they had done what some of the teams in like soccer do when they get like, what is it, like allocation money or something, or like and like they're like, we've acquired allocation money or something. And like they're like, we've acquired cap space, and then they do like an interview with cap space. Or they're like, we're very excited to have cap space coming to our team.
It's the most like fun. It's like, you know, those jokes when they're like, oh, we trade so-and-so for a bag of pucks. Like, it's basically the same thing, right? Like, they should have included that. Like, we've traded all of this for like free popcorn at our next game.
Yeah. Chris Draper was once traded for $1. That was pretty funny. Yeah, that happened. And then he won a cup, like multiple cups. So he showed them.
In exchange for all of that, in exchange for what they received, they gave up goaltender Aiden Hill and a 2022 7th-round pick. Pretty decent haul for pretty much nothing going the other way. Yeah. Same thing, kind of like Anaheim. Most of their, or not most, but some of their best like prospects were all on the exemption list, so they didn't really have much to worry about. Obviously, there's the rumors of Oliver Ekman-Larsson wanting out, or the Coyotes wanting to trade Oliver Ekman-Larsson. They still protected him. They didn't get either him or Phil Kessel to waive their no movement clauses. So for their team, I chose, oh God, who was it? It was, I picked your boy. I picked Joseph Coronar because the team's going to need an AHL goalie. Why not? The defense group is not enticing. Pretty much everyone is expiring in 2021, or they're really old, like Alex Goligoski, still useful. Nick Jarlmason, 35. Yeah.
They're just making too much.
But they're UFAs, right? So you're basically just picking them to hopefully keep them around in their twilight years. Not really worth it. And the forward group, I'm good. they're it's AHL depth or Andrew Ladd. So why would you? So that was my logic.
So I actually did go with a forward. I went with Christian Fischer. He's a bit of he's another case of a bit of a younger guy.
RFA.
RFA, controllable years there. I think that, but he only had $1 million. I think he actually did okay. I think he had a pretty good year for the Coyotes points wise. So because I feel like that name's come up a couple times, and I was almost kind of surprised that I saw him there. Yeah. So I was like, this is actually where you start getting into I think this is a guy who's going to be playing in the NHL next year, regardless of where he goes. Oh, okay. You know what? He only had 11 points in 52 games, so not that great. But not that great points wise. But I still think at $1 million, 24
in the expansion draft too. If you can find a young, an under 25 RFA with a year left on his deal, he's at least proven that he can produce at the NHL level. You're rolling really. If he works out, great. If not, maybe you try and flip him because he's still young enough that some team might see value in him. So it's a win-win of an acquisition basically.
Yeah, it was just kind of going for it. You never know with especially with the expansion teams, right? Sometimes it's just in your best interest to take the guys can play NHL hockey.
Exactly. So that brings us to the Boston Bruins. Also no moves, but they've got a bunch of drama surrounding their team because both Yaroslav Halak and Tuukka Rask have been pretty public in the fact that they are moving elsewhere. They're going to test the UFA markets.
I didn't see the Rask one. That doesn't surprise me, but
I know this is a long time ago that the Rask thing came out, right? Where he was like, "This is probably my last year here." Yeah, and I think it was Halak's agent too. That was I'm toast.
Let's not kid ourselves. The Bruins fan base, the majority of the Bruins fan base does not deserve Tuukka Rask, so that's fine.
This is true. This is very true.
They have not treated him as well as as he deserves to be. So too bad. Oh well.
The interesting protected players. The protected list is pretty unsurprising. Dan Vladar was the one goalie they protected. all the forwards are pretty much pretty standard. You know, you got Bergeron, Pasternak, Marchand, Charlie Coyle, DeBrusk, whatever. The
not as many
notable
hard choices as I thought they were going to have.
Yeah,
like
the notable thing about their protection list and unprotected list is that 2 of their picks from that 2015 first round, where they had 3 in a row, the infamous Reese Jessup pick, where he was like, "Oh shit, they could get Barzal, DeBrusk, and
it was Barzal, Connor, and Shabbat."
Right, Barzal, Connor, and Shabbat here, and they picked Jake DeBrusk. Jake
DeBrusk, who's been a good player, like
fine.
He hasn't been those other 3 guys, but he's still been a regular contributor NHL guy. Like nothing wrong with that pick at the end of the day.
The other 2, Zach Senyshyn and Jacob Zaboral. Recently, this season, they kind of started getting into some games. I think Jacob Zaboral actually got way more games than Senyshyn did. I think he was actually getting pretty decent minutes on the third pairing for them. Didn't see a lot of playoff action, but like nonetheless still played. But pretty brutal. That I think we brought it up so many times. Just how like if that team just lands 3 or 2 better players than Zaboral and Senyshyn right now, like they've probably won against the Bruins, and they have a cup, and still like a dynamic core that's ready to replace dynasty right now. Oh yeah,
they'd be an absolute you would not we think Tampa winning back-to-back cups is impressive. Imagine if literally you had the Bruins take not generational. That's overselling it.
But
very
like
good,
2
3
elite,
very good
top line forwards or whatever,
and
or
one,
like a number
and
one.
one and a number 1 defenseman to replace a cheap replacement for who was Torrey Krug or Zdeno Chara. Yeah, exactly. They were just, it's like, oh, I see. They're just never going to not win. Okay.
Yeah. I'm curious about who your take is, because I wasn't really too sure who to pick. They always had some good players like Andre Kasia, Nick Ritchie, and Sean Corrali from the forwards I liked. But I kind of just hedged my bets and went with the young defenseman in Jeremy Lauzon. He played quite a bit on their third pair. So I was like, maybe, on with a better pairing or something, maybe with more trusted minutes, maybe he might be more useful. Or worst case scenario, you still keep him as a third pair or 7th defenseman, and he's cheap, and he's still signed until next season, so you don't have to worry about it. Same thing as your previous logics, you have an RFA until 2022, so you still got a guy at the very least who can give you NHL games. But for you, who did you pick?
I also went the younger defenseman style route. Although I picked the more expensive option. I picked Connor Clifton, $26 million. He's one of the few players I picked who actually has term beyond just next season.
Right.
And he's also one of the few UFAs I picked, because a lot of the guys my defense is a little bit more UFA laden, but guys who have term. A lot of players I picked are mostly RFAs and guys who are only got 1 year left. So to try and maximize the amount of chances you get to renegotiate and try and get another contract with them. Clifton, I just went for he's got 2 years. It's not too expensive. It's not make or break. If it works, it's great. If not, it's not going to kill you. It was kind of, I think I could be swayed on to go with Lauzon. I think in a different situation, depending on how I'm feeling. That's not one of the picks where I was like, this is the guy that I absolutely hedge my bets on. We'll get to some of those guys later.
Yeah. But you're not looking at the Bruins looking for the home run pick who's going to be your star, right? You're just looking for a guy or an asset. So
you're looking for depth.
That's kind of the logic, yeah.
Yeah, Clifton's just depth, and he's depth, and he's controlled depth for a couple years. At least you have a guaranteed contract for a couple years on your books, which is good.
Yeah. The next team, everyone's favorite train wreck, the Buffalo Sabres. No moves at the Saturday trade deadline number 2. They had a couple young prospects that were exempt from the draft that they didn't have to worry about. But man, their protected roster and unprotected roster was one of the most depressing things to look at for a team that's been in a rebuild for as long as they have. The fact that like all they could really protect was, who was it? A bunch of guys named Rasmus and Tage Thompson, like Casey Middlestad, who's been on the outs with the team like pretty much since they drafted him. Like
Sam Reinhart, another one. Like it's
they're
not great.
Grasping at straws.
It's not great.
Yeah, for this one, you know who I took? I took Drake Kajula because I was like, if I'm Seattle, I'm taking Drake Kajula, even though he's a UFA, and maybe when it comes to the Vancouver pick, I try to do some kind of flip where I send Kajula their way in a sign-in trade because he's got the Besser connection, or you keep him for the Detroit pick, which we'll get into. But anyway, who was your pick here?
That's a pretty funny one. I went Jake McCabe. I went with the defense, 27. He's a little bit older, but making a little bit more money. But and is on injured. I think he's injured, or at least he spent a lot of the time on IR this year. But he's supposed to be an okay defenseman. I believe the Canucks are interested in Jake McCabe as well. So like he's supposed to be a decent player when he's actually in the lineup, when he's healthy. So I went that route because I think he's one of the few players that presents the idea of if we put him in a different situation, he might be able to shake the Buffalo curse a little bit here. Because there's really the problem with so many of these guys here is they're just like Zemgus Girgensons. Like remember when he got when he went to like the All-Star game because all of Latvia voted for him. Yeah. And like even then like he was kind of decent. Like he wasn't supposed to be like a world ender. Like he wasn't supposed to be an all-star, but like he was supposed to be okay. And then literally Buffalo got to him too. Just every player they seem to ever take, just never as good as they used to be when they get there.
In my notes for this one, I wrote, Seattle is picking either a meth defenseman or AHL depth, or Jeff Skinner if Ron Francis is huffing paint.
I mean,
because that contract, there's no way you're picking it up without like a side deal, right?
I mean, without a side deal where it's like you're also getting Jack Eichel, like that's the only way I think that's in the package. Yeah, you get Jack Eichel. All we want is I don't know, that might be interesting. Like, what if they go? What the Kraken do have the second overall pick? What if Buffalo gets to pick 1 and 2? Like, what if Buffalo's like, we're gonna give you Eichel. We're going to give you Eichel, and then we're going to pick 1 and 2. Like, what if that's
both of those picks up?
Oh, that would actually make me sad.
That would be so sad. I'd be like, I feel so bad.
Buffalo to not suck. Like just for their fans, I want them to not suck. Like, yeah, like it's a bummer.
There's a multiverse timeline here where the Ryan O'Reilly, Jack Eichel, and Jeff Skinner, when they first got there, like when that theoretically should have been the start of like an awesome team, but it was a shit show. So that's a shame. And it would really suck if they traded Eichel, drafted some guys in a draft that's like, there isn't really a consensus like elite number 1 player. It's like all kind of nebulous and in the air. So it's a rough year to trade Jack Eichel for picks number 1 and 2, right? So anyway,
but yeah, that maybe we'll get some chaos, and maybe that's where it'll go.
I'm absolutely hoping for chaos. That's all I kind of want.
That's all you can ever want. Yeah.
Speaking of chaos, we'll get to our next team, the Calgary Flames, who this is probably the easiest pick in the draft, right? I mean, there's maybe like 2 or 3 like surefire picks in the draft for me. This one was like a no-brainer. Mark Giordano was exposed. This is an easy one. I also picked him with the logic that it's going to completely implode the Calgary Flames dressing room.
Oh my God.
So if you're Seattle and you're like, I can both get myself a like top pairing defenseman, like who can eat a shit ton of minutes and, looks still really damn good for a near 87-year-old. And I can ruin the locker room of a division rival all in a swift maneuver. That's like perfect. And like, for some reason I thought Mark Giordano had like a $10 million cap hit. I don't know why. So when I saw his was at 6.75, I was like, oh, this is this is the easiest pick they've ever made. You get like a captain
Interesting
for like a 1-year deal, and you ruin a Pacific Division rival. That's the easiest thing ever. Anyway, you might disagree. You might have Oliver. I'm gonna guess you picked Oliver Shillington, or you picked Derek Ryan.
I did pick Oliver Shillington. Because here's the thing. Yes, it would be like, it would suck. Like Calgary would be kind of upset. It would be pretty upset if they lost like Giordano. It wouldn't be fun. But here's the thing. By the time they actually get to like their first game, he's gonna be 38. Like, he's 38 years old. He's like, I get that he can play a lot of minutes. He can play a decent amount of minutes for a guy at 38, and he's still pretty good for that age. But you're only going to get 1 year out of him before he goes to UFA and probably retires. Let's be honest. He's probably not I don't see him, unless he's going back to Calgary. I don't see him taking another contract after that. And I just think that the cost of like, that's a lot of money. Like, yeah, it's only 1 year. That's a lot of cap to give to a guy who's going to be 38. I just think you're better off going with Shillington. Yeah, he'll need a new contract, but the chances of him turning into something better long-term for your team is much better than the expecting Mark Giordano to keep being a Norris-level defenseman. Like, I think you're just better off going in that direction.
Fair enough.
I mean, I will say, like, if they pick Giordano and I'm not going to be like, that's the dumbest pick ever. Like, no, okay, I get it. Like, I'd get it from a leadership standpoint. I'd get it from the fact that he does have the pedigree of being a Norris winner. Like, I get that. I get all that. I just think you got to set yourself up. You got to think about, like, yes, you got to think about this year, but you want to make sure that you're set up with enough people for the future, because guys are eventually, some guys are not going to want to resign even after 1 year, because they just were like, I don't want to play for an expansion team. So you got to give yourself as many lottery tickets for the possibility that they will want to stick around even past year one. So Giordano probably wouldn't, not because he wouldn't want to, just because he's an older guy. He might be ready to call it. He might have been thinking he was going to retire a Flame. So who knows? But I think I went with Shillington for those reasons.
Okay. The next team, Carolina Hurricanes, your second favorite team in the NHL. I chose from them. Who was it? It's a logo again. Oh, I took Jake Bean.
I also took Jake Bean.
Oh,
this one was one of the tougher ones for me, because on one hand, I think Niederreiter would be a very good pick, especially like for a team that's probably going to be pretty competitive out of the gate.
Yeah.
But another case of like, I kind of like I like the idea of a younger defenseman. And I think Jake Bean has the opportunities to be like pretty good. Like, I've seen some people have, I guess some people have been really upselling his abilities. And like, I think a lot of people were using the Shea Theodore comparable with Jake Bean, which is that's probably a bit much, but I think again, it's about the younger guy. He's going to be a little bit, you want to give yourself chances. I think there are a couple guys up here where, like, Morgan Guy almost picked on the forward unit. We'll get to another team right after this, actually, where I made a couple like flips from my original draft group. And originally I had Geeky there, but I was like, I wanted to go with the guy who was a little bit younger, the younger defenseman. And I think Carolina's done a very good job at finding decent defensemen over the years. So they would be a team to pick as well.
That was my logic too. Like they have there's a lot of good young forwards in this expansion draft class in general, that I think the upside with picking a younger defenseman who's proven that he can be a pretty decent producer at the NHL level has a bit more pull to me than, say, like a 22-year-old forward who's, proven that he can produce too, but like is going to need to fight his way above some of the stars that are available in this draft, when instead you could go with maybe someone that's more useful or provides better utility than what like a Morgan Geeky would need. So I'm with you.
Yeah. Now, the one thing we haven't fully considered is the possibility of maybe the Kraken maybe instead of going for one of the actual like RFA guys or somebody who's actually already under contract, the possibility that maybe they go to Dougie Hamilton instead and try because Dougie Hamilton is a bona fide first line.
And there's some really nice museums in Seattle too. So
yes,
the cell in the pitch is right there.
The Museum of
the
Pop
Aviation
Culture
Museum. It's pretty rad.
Museum of Pop Culture is very good. Is a really good.
So he's got options.
I love that place. So, but do you think that might be the direction they go? Do you think? Because I could see them I think it would be worth their time to make him a really good pitch.
Francis's comments about how cap space was the most valuable thing for this draft kind of makes me think that the UFAs they pick up are going to be guys that they can get on the cheap. And what they're really going to be prioritizing is flipping guys for assets. So I don't know if prioritizing a guy entering like the UFA class and is going to command like a $7 million salary. I don't know if that's what they really want to do or commit themselves right away. I think it's more like when Vegas showed up, they were pretty decent, and I don't even think they realized how good they were going to be from out the get-go. And it wasn't until like the trade deadline when they were like, oh, I think we actually have a team here, and we've collected so many assets that we can actually maybe build something that can contend for like a while here if we just like throw, caution to the wind and just go for it. And they made some really good player acquisitions to make that happen.
A couple bad ones
Lightning
too,
a couple really bad ones, but you can't hope that Lightning strikes twice. If you're Ron Francis, you can't be like, oh, Vegas did it, so we're going to be able to do it. Like I feel like they're going to be like with an analytics department that large that they invested in. I feel like the takeaway here is going to be, let's not go crazy with money spending, because if we manage our books for the first 3 years, we could probably take over this league short-term and long-term by taking advantage of everyone else's cap mistakes. Because they know the cap is flat for another 3 to 4 years at 81.5. So if they can get out of the gate with like 20 mil in space, they're set up big for the long term.
They're set up big. I will say that I fully agree with you on that, but I also think that there will be that they will say that there are, specifically in this UFA class, and there's other teams we'll get to in a bit here that I think I'll also kind of bring this up specifically. It's just like, I think there are guys out there that if you are going to spend big money, or if you were willing to take the risk on some big money contracts, there are a few guys available right now that would be worth your time to make that pitch for.
Yeah.
Hamilton there's not again, not every guy. You shouldn't do it for everybody. Definitely playing it safe and being as frugal as possible is going to be a good bet for you as well. But I mean, there are not a lot of Dougie Hamiltons ever readily available on the open market. It's pretty rare that a guy of his caliber gets to free agency, let alone is potentially available for you to have exclusive negotiating rights with. So You never know. Make your pitch, go for it. But I do think at the end of the day, Jake Bean is probably where they're going.
Yeah. All right. Next team. Let's speed through a couple of these. Chicago Blackhawks. No moves prior to the deadline. They didn't try to get Jonathan Taves to waive his no movement clause. Didn't really matter because they really had nothing to protect. They're not really exposing anything of value here. I picked Adam Gaudette because I've seen Adam Gaudette play. He's a volume shooter. He knows how to score in this league, and he scored pretty well for Chicago, all things considered. I would not be shocked if he had a resurgence and was like a bona fide goal scorer for Seattle. Your thoughts?
But Cody, he celebrates too much, and he plays.
Oh, that's true.
Games.
Right.
He plays too many video games.
I should have passed. I should have passed on the pick.
Yeah, we can't allow that.
Your choice?
I also went with Gaudette. I initially picked Nikita Zadorov specifically because there's a lot of name recognition aspect to him. Well, in hockey circles anyway, not necessarily on the grand scheme of things. Yeah.
People listening to this don't know who's Nikita.
But I think I believe a lot of analytics people, if you ask them about Zadorov, would say he's not the best in terms of what his advanced stats say. And like you mentioned before, the Kraken really have put together a team that's going to put a pretty heavy. That's going to bringing a pretty heavy presence of advanced stats. So I don't think Zadorov would be their choice at the end of the day, especially at 26. I think with Gaudette, 24, under $1 million, making under $1 million, you get to renegotiate right out of the gate, and probably get probably get him for like he'll cost you over $1 million.
Yeah,
he'll cost you over $1 million, but not a lot. Not a lot more. So, yeah, I think you're best off taking that bet overall.
Okay.
And stick it to the Canucks as well, especially as a Seattle team. They're gonna want to do
Colorado,
that.
Adam Gaudette comes in, gets a hat trick in his first game in Spokane Arena or wherever it is.
Assisted by Jared McCann and Braden Holtby.
And Troy Stetcher.
And Troy Stetcher, that's right. We'll get there. We're going to get there.
So, yeah, we're going to beeline through a couple more of these. Colorado Avalanche, they flipped Ryan Graves so they could protect their big stars, Theodore. Who was it? Theodore, Makar, and...
Lots of, yeah.
Who's the other guy? Forgetting. On their decor.
On their decor would have been. I mean, you are, but like that's
us. Taves. Yeah,
Taves. Yeah,
sorry,
Taves.
Not Theodore.
Devin Taves.
Vegas. Gerard Makar and Taves. Okay, so Landeskog, obviously, he's probably walking to UFA right now. He's got like issues with them. You go ahead.
Oh, so okay. He is. If you're gonna make a UFA pitcher or forward, right now, especially considering it does not seem to be going well with Colorado at all, because of just how how team friendly Nathan McKinnon's contract is, and you don't want to Gabriel Landeskog necessarily making more than Nathan McKinnon. Mm-hmm. If you're going to make a good pitch for somebody to be part of your team and your captain, this is the guy. If I'm the Kraken, you should make a good pitch for Gabriel Landeskog out of any of the big names available. I think this is the guy if you're going to put good money out there for somebody, he's worth your time. Landeskog is the guy to go for that. But if they're just picking based on just the regular exposed draft pick group, Jonas Donskoy. Has experience playing for good teams, was a big part of the San Jose Sharks Cup run a few years back, scored a big overtime goal for them, is a very good contributor for teams. He's a great bottom six guy. He's making a little bit more than maybe you'd like a bottom six guy to make, but the way the Avalanche are built, they do have a little bit more. They were built more closely resembling like a top 9 rather than a top 6 and a bottom 6. So he might be a guy worth going for. He's only under contract for 2 more years. It's a pretty low risk. He's a pretty low risk pick to take. I think he would do well.
Yeah, I chose Jacob McDonald purely because some very smart people said he was a good rate scorer, and I said, okay, that sounds good, so I chose that.
That's a good strategy.
When smart people suggest things, I go, okay.
Yeah, I almost sent my mock team to some smart people and was like, hey, how'd I do here? Yeah. I should anyway. I'm
gonna do that because my next pick for the Columbus Blue Jackets, I had no interest in taking Max Domi. I don't want that contract. I think it's a pretty bad deal for what he brings. Maybe he's on a cheaper deal. He might be worth the dollars, but I really don't think he's that good, to be completely honest. So basically, if you're looking at the Blue Jackets list, you're basically looking, am I picking Domi or AHL depth? So I chose the AHL depth, and I just picked Dean Kukan because he's got another year left on his contract. Oh no, it expires next year, but whatever, doesn't matter. It's a wash of a pick. Maybe you can flip him to someone else, but otherwise Columbus had nothing. Dean Kukan did play 35 games for them, so he's actually he is NHL caliber. So you could actually that's a pretty decent pick. I went in a slightly different direction. I specifically went for
the one RFA who has term available, and that's Kevin Stenlund. I don't know much about him.
I know him from the AHL. That's
yeah. I imagine he is probably a few years away. I mean, he played 32 games all on his own, and he had 10 points. He's not actually he might be he might be an NHL guy.
Yeah.
But either way, I was kind of like, I don't know much about him. But I saw the term. I mostly picked him. He was one of the guys that I especially was like, oh, I see he's got term and he's RFA. Okay, he's my choice, and that was kind of that was the strict logic on that one. I don't know enough about the Jackets prospect system to give it a proper pick. Yeah.
That's kind of my logic for our next team, the Dallas Stars. I didn't know anything about this player, but again, smarter people said this guy's a good rate scorer and a pretty good pick for someone that might improve with more ice time. So I chose Adam Masherin. Or Mascarin. I don't know.
I think you were close. I think you're close enough. He's been he's been playing for the Texas Stars for a long time, right?
Yeah. Originally, I had picked Jason Dickinson as the obvious pick for Seattle, but then
but where did he go?
Our fan favorite Vancouver Canucks managed to actually make a deadline deal and acquire him for a 2021 third round pick, which it's not a bad value.
We'll get there. We'll talk more about the Canucks at the very end, I think. But overall, that trade was very good for Vancouver.
It left Dallas with pretty much not much to pick up. So that was my pick. The youngest possible forward that might be useful to Seattle. And so Mascarin was my pick. What about yours?
I went a bit of a controversial direction. I'm taking my first goalie here. I'm taking Ben Bishop. And I know what you're thinking immediately. He's injured. He's injured. That's probably a very bad idea to take on the $5 million goalie who's been hurt or has major injury concerns. I am taking him specifically on the idea that from what we can tell, again, this is let's be very clear. This is just my own best guess. I have no intel on this, but it doesn't feel like you're going to see Ben Bishop play again anytime soon.
He's a great pick for possibly going on LTIR, which again, just more cap space for a team that's swimming in it right now.
If he were healthy and still playing, depending on how good assuming he was still a decent goaltender, I'd be going in a different direction because probably Dallas protects him if he's still healthy, relatively healthy, instead of Anton Khudobin. And overall, I think I would probably have gone with somebody, say, like Julius Honka or something instead. Just a defenseman, just taking a defenseman from there. This was a tougher pick. But my thought process was, I think this is going to be one of the situations where the Kraken are able to go, hey, we'll take this guy. We'll put him on LTIR on our own in exchange for stuff. They might get something else out of it. Someone maybe off the list who is protected, or draft picks or something. Yeah. So I think that's the logic here. Because other than that, I don't see a lot of guys here where it's like, this guy is definitely going to help our NHL team, or is really going to be a huge part of our AHL or part of our future. So I felt like Ben Bishop might be a good spot to go in terms of what you might be able to get out of taking his contract on.
Fair enough. Detroit Red Wings. This one's super easy.
This is a very easy pick for us.
Troy Stetcher. I'm assuming you picked Troy Stetcher.
Of course I picked Troy Stetcher.
Okay.
He's
all right, Edmonton Oilers.
Okay, bye-bye.
This is... So I just wanted to quickly touch on this. The whole Yzerman exposing Stetcher somehow validates Benning for getting rid of Stetcher for nothing. That is a stupid take. That was a take.
Dear.
People must realize that the expansion draft is where GMs kind of prove that they're not very good talent evaluators. And we'll get that a bit later when we get to teams like the Nashville Predators or the Pittsburgh Penguins. Just because these guys are GMs does not mean they know how to expertly identify talent across the league. Look at Jim Benning and the defense that he's brought onto his team. he's not the best evaluator of pro talent. The pro scouting department's been a bit of a train wreck.
Now you listen here. That Derek Pouliot is going to be so good. He's going to be so good in a few years. Don't you just wait? And Andre Padan too. I swear to God, you best wait your time. Oh, Nikita Trampkin. That was a bummer.
This is like the easiest layup for Seattle. They're going to get a fan favorite right out the gate. They're going to love his work ethic. He's the localest boy they can possibly get, really. Yeah. He'll easily be their best number 4 defenseman, and he will be, beloved for it. Like a Giordano Stetcher. So Canucks fans got to rue when Tanev and Giordano was a pairing for a brief period of time. Now it's going to be Giordano Stetcher, which will just be wonderful.
Who do I have him with? Who would I have him with? I'd have him with probably like I don't want to. Well, I have him with other guys.
So we'll get into
I'm not going to spoil my other picks, but I could also. I will say I could also see a scenario, like a rare scenario, where they maybe take Vladdy Nemesnikov instead. Sure. But no, I think Stetcher is the best choice.
Yeah. Stetcher also has experience with Dave Haxtell dating back to their time at UND. So if any player or if any coach is going to know how to get the most out of Troy Stetcher, it's probably going to be the guy that coached him to a NCAA title with the Fighting Sioux. So it makes sense. Yeah. Next team.
Do you have a goalie yet?
I'm getting.
You don't have a goalie. You do not have a goalie. Okay. I'm getting
Edmonton Oilers. No moves. Adam Larson, apparently he's out of here. He's pulling an Alex Edler, and he wants to test the UFA market. They might circle back. It's going to be another season or an off season of the circle back time, which is kind of obnoxious because then that just means it's just endless speculation until contracts get signed, which is
we're almost
our poor local media who just have to do their jobs and get eviscerated for even mentioning hypotheticals. Like, how dare they?
Well, what was the one everyone got mad at recently? Someone got very mad at the suggestion of I don't even remember
Schmidt leaving, Schmidt wanting out.
Probably it was probably that. And I was
something like that.
Okay.
But anyway,
it's like, again, players are never going to tell you I hate playing here. They're never going to do it.
And media members are never going to tell the public who their source is because then it fucks up their entire journalism career. So
exactly,
use your brains, people. Who'd you take?
I took Jujhar Khaira. RFA a little bit, maybe like I think this might be just I've seen this guy play pick from me. Like I'm sure if I actually ask some people who know a little bit better and know the Oilers system a little better, they'll probably tell me, no, you're overrating this guy. There's better options available here. But I just kind of, again, it was another case of like, I don't want, unless I'm getting Ken Holland is going to give me a bunch of things to take James Neal's contract away from him, or Kyle Turris or Oscar Klefbom, who might not even play next year, like we mentioned in the last show. There's not really much here. I think you're better. I think this is probably one of the just safer bets. Although I did almost take Tyler Benson just because he's a former Vancouver Giant.
That was my logic too. I was like, take the former, like the local kids, either Khaira or Benson. But I ended up picking Dominic Cahoon because I think he's actually like really underrated. He was a really good producer for Chicago when he first entered the league. I think he's one of those guys that I think if they bet on him having a resurgence playing in the top 6, like he would perform really well. And that's all it really was.
I don't hate that pick at all. That's a good pick. When I was looking at this list, I saw at the bottom, oh my God, Anton Slepyshev. I forgot about him. I remember when he was a big thing for the Oilers, and geez,
how times change.
Times change. The more they change, the more they stay the same.
Yes. Well, time has been pretty kind to the Florida Panthers, considering just a few years ago they were a complete train wreck, and now they're like kind of on their up and up. This one was a bit of a weird pick because I kind of know now, like it's very publicly accepted that Chris Driedger is going to sign with Seattle in the offseason as a UFA. So I don't know if that means they have to use an expansion slot on him, or
they do.
Okay, so then...
So how it works is, like, so for anybody listening who doesn't fully, like, understand the expansion process, which is totally fair because it is a little complicated. Basically, if you sign a UFA prior to the regular trade deadline, like before, when you have the exclusivity window, it counts as your choice in the expansion draft. So if they want Chris Driedger, he is there and so much that they want to sign him before the as part of the, like, before they lose their exclusive window, then he counts as their pick. He is the guy they are taking from Florida. There might be a situation where, I don't know, maybe they can work out something where they get him and somebody else from Florida based on, like, say, somebody else in the NHL that the Panthers might want. That's possible. Perhaps. But I don't know. Maybe based on, but I guess based on just, like, let's say we're doing this, we're the GMs, maybe your pick is different.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, so for me, I just picked Driedger because I was like, it's like kind of written. There's some good players, though. Like, you could pick, like, Noel Acciari or Alexander Wenberg and try and re-sign him as a UFA. But since it's pretty much so written as Driedger, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to bet against it. It's probably him.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I made my team based on before any of that stuff started leaking out, more or less. Like, I've come back and, like, rechecked it, but I was like, this was one of the picks where I was like, I kind of want to keep this based on this is who I would pick, even though I know it's probably going to end up being not the guy they go with. Yeah. I chose, and this was based partially off of the recommendation, the recommendations of former media relations guy for the Panthers, Thomas Drance. Marcus Nudavara is a very good defenseman, and he's a guy I wanted before for the Canucks. I wanted him as part of the Thomas Vanek trade back a few years ago. He was the guy I wanted. He was a former, I believe, 7th round pick who is now a regular NHLer. Not making too much money. Is a right shot, I believe, right defenseman. Yeah. And is controllable term. If I'm the Panthers, I wouldn't mind. I would like to, the Kraken. I would try and get both, like him and Driedger. But if they're only going, I see why they want Driedger. I will say there are some just based on some of the goalies available right now. They might be better off. They might honestly be better off just taking Nudavara and trying their luck with Driedger after. They might be. Because there are some guys available in the goaltending department who I did not expect to be there, who I really like. So, but either way, I don't think Driedger is necessarily a bad pick either. I think if they make that choice, that's a decent one as well. So, but I do like the idea of Nudavara. Maybe the Canucks can go try and make a deal for Nudavara. He's worth the time.
Maybe. Next team, the Los Angeles Kings. Very young squad. Not a whole lot on the at the unprotected list. Pretty standard protection list. The stars, Kopitar, Doughty, Brown, Arvidsson, who they picked up from Nashville in exchange for a couple picks, and the young goaltender Cal Peterson. And by young, he's 26, so he's not really that young, but you know what I mean.
He's not Jonathan Quick. He's not Jonathan Quick, which is shocking. Who
was exposed, by the way.
Here's the thing. It's not shocking in the sense of he's making a lot of money, relatively hurt, and I believe is no longer. And I believe Cal Peterson took over the starting role last year, so it's not actually that surprising. But also it is a little funny considering the whole Kings, the now very famous Kings tweet of "That's 10 years of our goalie being better than yours." It's like, oh, you're a little early here. You're a little early. It's Cal Peterson's net now. This was one of the places where I was kind of like, there wasn't anybody who I was like, who absolutely just shot out to me. So I went for, it was kind of a toss up in between Carl Grundstrom and Blake Lizotte.
I picked Lizotte.
I also picked Lizotte.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
We'll move on then.
We'll go to the next team, the now interesting Minnesota Wild.
Yes, after the Parise Suter buyouts, there's now a pretty overhauled protection list. Spurgeon, Dumba, and Brodin were now all protected, but they still had quite a few options. I found a lot of like older centers that they left exposed, but the most juicy one, which I actually thought was a bit surprising, was Capo Kakkonen, their rookie goaltender, who was pretty damn good for them last year in NHL minutes, who was exposed over Cam Talbot. I was genuinely kind of surprised about this. I picked.
I was
Kakkonen
also. I also picked. This was one of the easiest picks for me. As soon as I saw, my originally, had he not been available and had some of the other goalies we'll get to later not been available, I would probably have had Drieger on my initial list rather than Nudavara. But as soon as I see Kakkonen, I'm like, oh God, yeah, I'm taking this guy. Like, there's no way in hell I'm taking anyone else. Like, this is a young goaltender who's making only $725,000 and was and got Calder votes this year. Like, how do you not take him?
Even if you're Seattle, even if you're Seattle and you're like, okay, we're gonna go for Ben Bishop and we are gonna sign Chris Drieger and some other goalie, you could pick up Kakkonen and you could flip him for such a haul if you wanted to.
You'd be out of your mind not to take. This is unless they are like offering you Joel Eriksson Ek to not take it and Kevin Fiala to not take him. Like,
it's like a guy standing right outside my window getting a
live show. That's very funny.
Okay.
You take Kakkonen. There's no one else here that is even close.
Carson Soucy, maybe. Bonino.
I'm happy for Cam Talbot that he's returned to form and he's finally gotten back to the point where he's like a goalie worth protecting. Like, I'm happy for him. But Minnesota, what are you doing?
Yeah,
like, I don't know. Like, I don't think they're like as much. Like, I don't think the Kraken were going to take Cam Talbot if he were there, even as good as he's been.
Especially after hearing like Carey Price is getting exposed, Ben Bishop's exposed, Jonathan Quick. Like, wouldn't you take the risk of exposing the veteran and hoping your vet isn't worth it?
Yeah, right. Now, if you're the Wild, now to be fair, like, you might not be privy to those conversations. Like, you might not, like, I don't think the Carey Price stuff came out until like right at the very end, like past the deadline. So maybe they just don't know, but they have to be. I have to imagine after seeing the list of goaltenders that are available, like after seeing what goalies were available and whatnot, they're probably going, "Oh no, why did we do that? Like, why did we leave? Why did we think this was going to be easy? Like, no, you take Kakkonen even if you don't need a goaltender. You take him because somebody will pay you good money to take him.
That'll 100%. Bring us to the Montreal Canadiens then.
This might be the most interesting and longest conversation we have here because this is
we're almost at an hour already, and we've still got quite a few teams to go through. So we will try to keep the discussion a little short.
Hey, if it's worth talking about, that people will listen. So you know what? Have at it. Have at it. Let's go.
Remember, the fast forward button has two right triangles right next to each other. Yeah. Or you can put us on the what's that?
You can speed us up. Just speed it up to half speed. Yeah.
Have you ever done that for some though? It's so weird to listen to.
I've done it with audiobooks. I do with audiobooks because I'm actually a relatively quick. I'm a quicker reader, so I generally do with books. Not so much with podcasts. No.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
This one's very interesting. The whole Canadiens thing. Yeah. I'll tell you I picked Carey Price, but here's why. I have a feeling all this like injury talk and whatever, I think it's all complete bullshit. I have a feeling they've got a deal already worked out in principle. And what they're going to do is they're going to flip Price back to Montreal at 50% retained.
So you can't do that. They've already said. The NHL has said has told, apparently that was discussed already. I believe Pierre LeBrun tweeted that's already been discussed as an idea, and the NHL told them no, we would consider that blatant cap, we'd consider that blatant cap, whatever the rule.
Cap circumvention or whatever.
Cap circumvention. Yes, thank you for that was the word.
Oh, well, that screws up my entire team building then.
They would consider that cap circumvention. You can, I think if they traded him anywhere else, it would be fine.
Yeah.
Probably, I imagine it'd be fine. But if you trade him specifically, if you trade him back to Montreal at 50% retained, the league has said that that's cap circumvention and they won't let them do that. So that won't happen.
I'll still pick him for the sake of, because Chaos. I still think Chaos is awesome. I think he's a bona fide star. They'd get like their Marc-Andre Fleury out of him. Local enough, like ties with indigenous communities. Like it's just like a surefire bet for him. And then that opens up the possibility of the rumored Elias Pettersson offer sheet, which might happen. And
which is, since that's Sean Warren, courtesy of Sean Warren from our from the Point Shot Hockey podcast network,
Area 51 Sports or whatever. Yeah. If that actually happened, I'm all for it because I'm a proponent of Team Chaos. I think you and I both are a proponent of Team Chaos in this expansion draft.
I mean, I'm of Chaos until you start telling me that it's going to affect the way how the Canucks get business done. Then I'm a little bit
he might
like,
not sign it. But it might just be offered, which is the funny part. Which
would be funny. And here's the thing. If Marc Bergevin did offer Elias Pettersson like a big contract, like an 8 by, I don't know, whatever. Yeah. Here's the thing. He would honestly kind of be doing the Canucks a huge favor in the sense of, hey, I just took all of the negotiation trouble for you. Here, go ahead and re-sign him. Because that would be the easiest, we're going to match it. Like situation ever. Like there's no way you're not matching the Pettersson a Pettersson offer sheet again with the idea that he actually does sign it. Yeah. It maybe makes things a little harder to sign Quinn Hughes, but like here's the thing: if this is what happens, you're gonna make room. Like if you're telling me that like, oh, now you're in trouble, now it's gonna be harder to sign Quinn Hughes. I don't think there's any way that Jim Benning is going to not go, well, we got to make room for Quinn Hughes now, and we're going to. Like, you just do it. You just do it. So, frankly, he'd be doing the Canucks a huge favor, really, by taking all the negotiation work out of the equation for them. So, sure, if he wants to do that, hell, he's played for the Canucks. Put him in the Ring of Honor. Like, Marc Bergevin was a Canucks defenseman.
He might
put
do
him up there.
Favor. You never know.
He might do that. He might be doing them a huge favor by, like, just doing that part, doing the heavy lifting for them.
But your choice, sir.
Here's the thing. This is, again, based on the idea of had the goaltenders been based on what I expected the list of goalies available to look like. If Carey Price was available, if it had been a little bit different, like if say Capo Kakinen already, like if he was not available and it was Cam Talbot, in a couple other cases you go down the list. If the goalie list wasn't so full of good options, yeah, why not take Carey Price? Go for it. But looking at just how many pretty decent goaltenders there are, particularly young, decent goaltenders who have all of the upside in the world going for them, I think taking Carey Price is a bad call, is a huge mistake. You'd be making a massive mistake in terms of, like, I've seen so many people saying, well, what if he returned to form? What if he didn't? Is a better question. What if that was a flash in the pan? Like, here's the thing. Carey Price is still very good. Like, he's been very good, but that contract is a massive risk to take on with 5 years left as an expansion team. If you're a team on the cusp of, say, winning a cup and you know it, then I say go for it, you know? But as a team that wants to set itself up well for the future and not put themselves in cap hell, I think it's a bad call to take Carey Price, because I think, again, there are a lot of other, not only are there a lot of other goalies that you could take for a lot cheaper that I think you'll get decent results out of just as good results out of for a lot longer time period. I also think there's a lot of other possible players worth, if you're going to splurge, going for rather than Carey Price, just because of they're younger, they're not going to command $10.5 million. They're just, they're not as big an injury risk. I don't fully doubt the injury stuff for Price. Like, I do think that there's a little bit of a lying. Oh, I shouldn't say lying. That makes it sound a lot more nefarious. Like, I think there's a little bit of,
I'm not saying he's lying.
Gamesmanship. That's what I'm looking for.
They're playing poker.
I think there is some poker and some bluffing going on here in terms of how bad the injuries are for Carey Price and also Shea Weber. But I still don't think you should take them. I think it's not worth. I think it's just too much money. Which is why I picked Brett Kulak, a little bit good defenseman, has term, a serviceable guy for your blue line, which they will need. Which I think they'll need more, considering I think the defense is probably the thing that you're going to have the hardest time finding good players for in the expansion, good options for in the expansion draft. I think Brett Kulak is an all right go. But also, Thomas Tatar might be worth your time. You never know. He's a little bit
if you're betting on him like having, but if you're betting on him like having like a bounce back or something, maybe.
Yeah. I think with Carey Price, the risk is far outweighs the potential. And people are saying, "Oh, well, what about jersey sales?" Buddy, look, the Winnipeg Jets. I'm pretty sure if you went to a Winnipeg Jets game, you will find people wearing Alex Burmistrov jerseys. They're not. When a new team comes to town, people will buy jerseys of whoever you want, like of whatever. Like the third line guy, if he just scores the first goal in the franchise's history, you are not going to be hurting for jersey sales with the Kraken. I can guarantee it. So if you're thinking about merch, like that's backwards thinking. They'll be just fine with the merch sales. Hell, I'm already wearing a T-shirt. They haven't picked a single guy. Come on.
Yeah, but you buy merch for anyone.
That's true. It is a little true. I won't talk about my recent purchases, but.
We'll get to the next episode, maybe.
Maybe.
Next team on the docket, the Nashville Predators. This one's really interesting because they made a bunch of moves and they shed a shit ton of money. They acquired a bunch of young players. They did a fucking fantastic job.
They won the second trade deadline.
They managed to win the second trade deadline. Unfortunately, their protection list is really dumb. Really?
Okay,
really
tell me
dumb.
who. I don't have the protection list in front of me. I only have the exposed list. So please enlighten me here.
So the team flipped, for those that don't know, Ryan Ellis, who's like a number 1 or number 2 defenseman. He is 30 years old, but he had $6.25 million owed to him on his deal until he was 37. And the Predators managed to flip him and that entire contract to the Philadelphia Flyers in exchange for Philippe Myers and somehow Nolan Patrick, who they then flipped to the Vegas Golden Knights in exchange for Cody Glass. I don't know how you do a cap dump and end up with 2 young prospects in return, but they pulled it off.
I thought David Poile lost his touch a long time ago.
Same.
Holy cow. For you to turn, Ryan Ellis is probably better than we're giving him credit for right now, particularly because of the expensive contract.
Yeah.
But but the fact that he was able to turn Ryan Ellis into not just one decent young player in Philip Myers, but 2, and one of those was Cody flipping Glass.
Yeah,
that's incredible. That's wild.
High draft pedigree, basically just needs a change of scenery because obviously, a young center isn't gonna get that many good opportunities on a team as good as the Vegas Golden Knights. So it was
I saw people comparing Cody Glass and saying, "Is he the next Nolan Patrick in terms of guy who does not live up to the potential?" It's that's not why he got traded. He got traded because the Knights are so stacked. But also, the Knights got basically nothing for him except for Nolan Patrick, who's
his signing rights too, which is
who hasn't been great. I don't know why that. I don't know how that trade makes any sense for Vegas in any way, shape, or form. But I see why Philly made it to an extent. I see why Philly made it. But Nashville comes out made out like a bandit. Holy cow! And but who's their protection list? Who's the protection list here? It's Yossi. It's Saros.
Poile made some really good moves to acquire a bunch of young pieces. He then comically was like, "Oh, it's not a rebuild," even though he made 2 moves that were pretty much about as rebuildy as it gets.
Yeah.
But then they're one of only, I think, 3 teams who went with the 8 forwards and D combos with 1 goalie. They protected Philip Forsberg, Luke Kunin, and Tanner Jeannot, and 5 defensemen in Roman Josi, Matthias Ekholm, Philippe Myers, who they just acquired, Dante Fabro, and Alex Carrier. And of course, their goalie, Jose Soros. Now, I bet you're staring at me going, who's Tanner Jeannot? Tanner Jeannot was in the ECHL as recently as last year. He managed to score at above a point per game pace in the ECHL, got time with the Admirals affiliate, but not Milwaukee because they were not in session this year. They were on the Chicago Wolves. But he then performed at like a point per game pace in the AHL, came up to Nashville and got 5 goals and 2 assists in like 25 or 15 games.
Did he play in the playoffs?
They didn't make it, did they?
Yeah, they did. They played Carolina. It was the Saros-Milkovic battle. Yeah, it was 6 games. It was 6 games. They got a couple wins there. It was a good series.
Right. Anyway, point is, Tanner Jeannot is like I don't know, he's like 25 or 26. He's 24. Yeah. He's turning 25. But
here's the thing. Even if he was that good, he did manage to make his way up to the NHL. I don't think you were really that worried about him getting picked.
You're not worried about him getting picked. And it shows that David Poile valued Tanner Jeannot more than Victor Arvidsson. Because they traded Victor Arvidsson because he was going to get taken by Seattle.
That is true.
So they basically said, we don't want to lose Victor Arvidsson for nothing because we are going to use that expansion, that third spot.
We're going to use his
on
spot
Tanner
for Tanner Jeannot,
which is just baffling. So on one hand, I'm like, okay, this is like a really great string of moves to, kind of reload a bit, get some picks, get some young pieces in. Maybe they can kind of rebuild on the fly. But the protection list is where you're like, this seems like a missed opportunity.
Especially when they could have protected Eric Goodbranson. Like, that was a clear miss.
Yeah, like
that's a clear mistake.
Huge mistake on their part.
There's a lot of guys available here, particularly because of how weird in the cap situation the Predators are. Like, Matt Duchene is available. I believe he waived his no move clause or something to. I
don't think he had one, to be honest. I don't think him or Johansson did. I think it's it's a Poile staple to sign guys to really expensive deals, but not give them no movement clause.
Which is frankly a good call.
Which is a pretty decent trade off if you're getting paid $8 million.
That's a good that's smart. That's decent negotiating, at least from that point. But like Michael Granlund's available, Colton Sissons is available, Rocco Grimaldi, Calle Yarncrow, Eric Holla, Nick Cousins. Like, there's a list of players who all have NHL like good NHL experience. They've been around. A lot of them played in Cup finals with the Predators, or at least have won President's Trophy. So there's like decent names. The only reason that they're kind of here is just because they got signed a little bit to too much rich contracts. So their value is dipped based on that specifically. Yeah.
So for this one, I picked Calle Yarncrow, the team's leading scorer from last year, who's got 1 year left on a $2 million contract. Wow. So again, when it comes to the protection lists, the team let Victor Arvidsson go, who had a down year, admittedly, but also they didn't protect their team's leading scorer, who's on a bargain contract that could arguably be flipped this year at the trade deadline for a absolute ransom, so they could protect a guy who was in the ECHL as of last year. It's bizarre, man. Makes no sense. Your pick, I will say, before Lachlan gets into his clip or into his pick, we are going to acknowledge the Luke Prokop story just at the very end of this, because we have a lot to get through, like, still. So we want to kind of rush through it and then close out with it, because it's honestly some of the best news ever, and we want to close on a happy note. So, Lachlan, your pick for the Predators.
I picked Yakov Trenin. He's 24. He's supposed to be pretty good, like in terms of like from a prospect standpoint. He's under contract for more than 1 year. He is only making $725K. I don't know a whole lot about him. I just know he's supposed to be pretty darn good. And there's not a lot of reasons. Like, there are so many reasons why he feels like a good pick worth your time. I went with Trenin. I went Yakov Trenin.
Okay. The New Jersey Devils, they picked up Ryan Graves, protected him, gave up like a struggling former first-round pick or second-round pick in Mikhail Maltsev and a 2021 second-round pick. Their unprotected list is really, really fucking ugly. It's kind of the same issue with like the Ducks the Coyotes, where it's just like all their young stars are really like the protected ones. So there really wasn't much to pick here. Their most expensive forward was Andreas Janssen, former Toronto Maple Leaf.
Yeah, who I forgot was a Devil. I completely forgot he was a Devil.
So this was a bit of a weird one to pick out of. I believe, who did I choose? I took Connor Carrick because he's a
Connor Carrick.
Oh, really? I picked him for absolute non-hockey reasons. Actually, sorry, there is one hockey reason. He's a right shot defenseman, but also he podcasts and he seems like a really cool dude.
Yes.
That's it.
I agree. I agree. That's not why I picked him, but I agree on those. Yeah, I agree on the vibes pick there. I almost went with Will Buchter. Thought he was a little bit pricey, so I went with Connor Carrick.
Fair enough.
He's supposed to be undervalued. He's apparently quite undervalued as far as like depth defensemen go as well. So I think that's a good pick. There's a good pick there somewhere.
Okay, next team. The fun team. The Chaos team.
Well, fun off the ice. Fun off the ice. They're boring on it.
Yeah, one of the most boring teams ever. New York Islanders, they dealt Nick Leddy, actually a really good deal because they managed to get Detroit to retain salary on it. We talked about this in our last episode where we were just kind of shaking our heads at why Detroit or Yzerman would agree to retain salary in a trade for Nick Leddy. And then Andrew Ladd, of course, and all those picks to Arizona just to free up some cap space. They basically handed Seattle like a first line of players to pick from.
Their protection list, I do remember looking at and thinking this is weird, beyond weird. Like
I could not believe they protected Cal Clutterbuck or Matt Martin.
Those are very some of the dumbest thinking. Like that's terrible thinking. That's such
Lou Lamoriello thinking though. Is like these are the two tough guys that got us to the Eastern Final.
Yeah, they got us here. Not Josh Bailey, who scored a bunch of goals. Who scored a bunch
Jordan
of
Eberle
goals in the playoffs, or Jordan Eberle. Yeah, exactly.
So you can. I don't know. I think you and I probably picked a forward here. That's my guess, right?
Oh yes, yeah.
So I picked Eberle. I picked Eberle because I figured Bailey's a good playoff performer, as we know from this most recent playoffs. Same cap hit, same age too, I believe.
I believe they are both 31. So they're both a little older. That is the one. The one concern is that they're over 30. That is a bit of a concern, but frankly, the skill is worth it. This is a case where it's like, oh, these guys are bona fide number one first liners, at least for what we're gonna get here. Yeah. This is either there's not really a wrong answer here. No. I could see reasons for picking either of them.
You could pick Eberle, you could pick Bailey, you could even pick Casey Cizikas or Thomas Hickey on defense, and you're getting like a premier player in his role, which is like, man, Lou Lamoriello, what the fuck are you doing? Because if he protected Eberle and Bailey, he's only exposing Cal Clutterbuck and Matt Martin.
Yep.
You really think Seattle is looking at either of those two guys like, oh, we got to get Cal Clutterbuck?
Yeah, or maybe they did tell them that just so they protect
just
them.
To fuck
that
with
would
them?
be very just so they totally bought it.
Yeah,
oh man, they left Barzell exposed. Oh, darn, what a crazy coincidence. I will say at first I almost went for Kiefer Bellows just because he's young, just because of the like prospect pool kind of thing and how like that's not bad. That wouldn't be a bad guy to have in your development system. Yeah. But as soon as you see Jordan Eberle and Josh Bailey are available, it's like, no, that's okay. That's okay. I don't need
I'll take the first line forward then.
Yeah.
If I have to.
Josh Bailey. I took Josh Bailey. He is the second most points on the team behind Matt Barzell during the season. He had 35 points. And then he had 13 more during the playoffs. This is a very clear answer. He's going to look great on the first line. He's going to look great as your first line winger. I think I specifically went with him a lot of the case just because I think, he has been like, not because with Eberle necessarily like, oh, I think he's going to be a lot worse or something. I just felt like Bailey is playing a little bit better. I think Bailey's the better pick for what the Kraken need.
Yeah. New York Rangers. There's something in the water in New York where the GMs make very stupid decisions. They're rumored to be offering Barclay Goodrow a 6-year, $3.6 million contract once the freeze is over. They traded for his rights. They had 4 players on no movement clauses on their protected list, which is baffling to me for a team as bad as they are to have that many players with NMCs on their roster. The funniest thing was that their Norris Trophy winning defenseman was exempt from being picked in Adam Fox. So that rules. No logic behind this pick for me. I just went with what smarter people said, and I chose Colin Blackwell. What about you?
I thought I was also picking based on smarter people. I picked Julian Gauthier.
I also heard he was a good pick as well. So I was like, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, there's right, just from looking at the list, there's a defenseman available at the top of their list who's making quite a bit of money, who I saw some people taking in their expansion drafts, and I was like, well, I'm not
Tony D.
He must not be named. Don't. Seattle's not first of all, Seattle's not doing that.
Seattle would ruin all the PR and work they've done to be inclusive by picking Tony D.
Yeah, that's just not happening. Like, if they did, that'd be a very stupid thing to do. There's a reason the Rangers didn't miss him for the entire year. And it's not just because he's not that good at hockey. He's unbelievable. He's absolutely not worth the headache. And that's not happening.
Speaking of not worth a headache, the next team, the Ottawa Senators, really nothing to pick from here. This one for me was Evgeny Dadonov because he's a proven scorer and he's the only real piece worth picking up from their exemption list. So I chose him. What about you?
I picked a goalie here. I went with Joey Decord.
Really?
I went with Joey Decord because I think one thing the Senators do actually have kind of a decent amount of guys available for is like young goaltenders. Because I mean, Anton Forsberg's here, Marcus Hogberg's here,
Joey
Decord is here. Philip Gustafsson, I think, is the one they ended up protecting. Unless I'm very much mistaken here.
I think he was exempt.
Or he's exempt they
did protect him. My bad. Yes, they did.
Yeah, I was gonna say, then I don't know who their goalie is. Who the goalie they chose was.
Yeah.
But because Matt Murray's here as well. But I think if you're, I think Decord. I picked Decord specifically because some of the goaltenders that they are going to take are going to either be traded, or they're probably going to either trade away, or they're going to try and send down to like the farm team and will get plucked off waivers kind of thing. Yeah. I think Decord is a safe bet for a goaltender who you can send down to the minors, who is not going to get necessarily immediately just taken afterwards. So I thought Decord was kind of a safe choice for goaltending depth. I took him.
Okay. The Philadelphia Flyers, as we just said with Nashville Predators, they acquired Ryan Ellis and his $6.25 million contract in exchange for Philip Myers and Nolan Patrick. This is a baffling trade from Philadelphia's perspective. I don't know what they're really trying to accomplish because their D isn't really that much of an issue.
Here's why they're trying to accomplish, I think. Last year, a lot of the reason why the season went so south is because Carter Hart got just decimated in terms of like they did not. Yeah, well, that was the right call. Like that. Here's the thing: I don't think Carter Hart is as bad as he showed last year. I think that was just an extremely bad year. Specifically, I think the Flyers did not do a good enough job insulating a young goaltender, the Canucks have run the risk of a couple times of late. But luckily, Thatcher Demko has just been otherworldly. Like you can't expect them to do that all the time. So I think they did I think the Ryan Ellis trade is a good call in terms of making sure you have some stronger defense who can make your young goalie's life a lot easier. So I do see the logic in this trade because right now, especially the way the team is built, they live or die by their goaltending a lot of the time. The Flyers have been like that for a long time.
They've been that for decades.
For some reason, they always build these teams that are like look good on paper, but for some reason are very, very overly reliant on having amazing goaltending at all times.
Yeah.
And if they don't, they immediately just fall apart. So Carter Hart, I think, is better than he showed. I think Ryan Ellis makes sense from that side of things. I don't know exactly who they protected necessarily because, I guess I know a couple names on the list, but like Jakub Voracek is out here. I don't think he's getting picked anyway, so they don't have to worry about that.
No.
I chose James Van Riemsdyk. He's a little bit older. It's one of the more riskier, bona fide 30-goal scorer producer. Every single year.
Can play everywhere on the lineup. I struggled with this one because I was like, it's either JVR and you just bite the bullet on his $7 million contract, or you go with Shane Gostisbehere and you hope that Dave Hackstall can get what he got out of Shane again, only with Seattle. So for that reason,
Gostisbehere spent a lot of time in the AHL. If you hadn't been following the Flyers a lot, there was a lot of
like an entire season at one point.
I don't think he was in. I don't think he played. I don't know if he even played one game for the Flyers this year. He might have played like 3 or 4. Like he didn't play a lot. He certainly wasn't in their top 6,
didn't he?
He probably played a bit, but he was not in their top 6. Like he was not part of their regular rotation. Alain Vigneault apparently did not like him.
No, he did not. He did not like a lot of players. I have a feeling that's probably why they got rid of Myers and Patrick, because they were younger. And as we know, AV does not really have patience for bringing young players along. That was kind of his issue with Vancouver. He really didn't have patience for the youth.
Yeah,
and the Rangers. So, and I think that was one of the big talking points before he came to Philly. Was he was like, "Oh, I'm not going to be the old AV who has an issue with young kids. I'm going to be more tolerant." And here we are, like 3 years later, and got like all these guys are gone.
Not great.
I picked Gostisbehere. I would peg the coach to being able to bring out the best in him. I think the change of scenery will be like massive for him too. But man, if you pick up JVR and he's still as good as he is in Philly as he is in Seattle, like you're golden.
I think JVR will be very good. I think JVR is a safe bet, like as he'll be good. Shane Gostisbehere is one of those where it's like if they did pick him and he does work out, it would probably be one of the steals of the expansion draft.
Yeah, agreed.
So known commodity versus mystery is basically the call there. Much. But they're both good. They're both decent.
Next team, another team with very baffling priorities in the protection list. The Pittsburgh Penguins, being headed by Brian Burke and Ron Hextall. They dealt Jared McCann to the Leafs in exchange for Philip Hallander and a 2023 7th-round pick.
Oh, boy.
And then they went on to expose both Zach Ashton-Reese and Marcus Patterson. No
relation to Petey. Different person.
No, different Patterson. No relation. But just a baffling list. Their protection list included Brian Rust, Kasperi Kapanen, Jeff Carter, 36-year-old Jeff Carter.
That's the weird one. Like Kapanen?
Yeah, Kapanen kind of whatever.
Brian Rust, I see why. I kind of get it, but also I have questions. Jeff Carter, that
Teddy Blugers, though, like you're really protecting a guy you got for like nothing over like a proven second line caliber center who has like unreal scoring rates. Like this is when we were talking about like the Stetcher thing, like why you can't ever just like simp for GMs, because player evaluations across the league are very baffling. So
I don't know in what universe, like what team they were watching where they thought Jared McCann was less valuable than some of the players they protected. Like it's not even about the list of guys they exposed. Like there are some guys on here where it's a little bit like, maybe you should have protected them instead kind of thing. Yeah. Trading Jared McCann instead of just keeping him and protecting him rather than some of the other guys is very odd.
It's so weird. So for you, who did you take here? I took – who did I – wait. I was just looking at him.
I took Zach Ashton-Reese.
That's what I
think he's – probably in your bottom 6, a little, probably closer to your bottom 6, might be a fringe, like a bit more closer to fringe guy. He's a little older than I thought. But like, again,
he's one of those players that strikes me as the type that would like thrive in the middle 6 as like a third line winger or a second line winger in a pinch. Like that's just like the type of vibe I get. And, you know, as an RFA, you're going to get him for a pretty cheap deal. Still 26. He's kind of in that like prime age. So worst case scenario, he doesn't play just as well. You might still have people in the league who still value him very highly, and you flip him.
Yeah.
Win-win.
They all also, Andre Badan is also available here.
Ooh,
the Kraken want
that's a good pick.
Another potential Canuck, and Cody Ceci, of course. Cody Ceci.
Oh, okay. I changed my mind. Cody Ceci.
And Mark Jankowski. Mark Jankowski.
Oh my goodness!
Watch out! Run away from the Penguins list right now. Yeah,
soon to be the best guy in the draft. Okay, that brings us to the San Jose Sharks. Your former team, who dealt Joseph Coronar, isn't it? I read it was like Koshinash or something. Korshnarsh.
Coronash. It's
okay.
Joseph Coronash. Yeah,
okay.
That's yeah.
So they dealt him and a 2022 second-round pick in exchange for Aiden Hill and a 2022 seventh-round pick.
Aiden Hill, who they then protected.
They had absolutely nothing to protect. They have absolutely nothing exposed. I debated.
Jonathan Dahlen got protected, in case you didn't read the list. Jonathan Dahlen was one of the Sharks' protected players, which is the right call, but also.
But even then, you're protecting a guy.
You're protecting a guy who hasn't played in the NHL.
Zero NHL experience, like pretty decent AHL production, but hasn't been there in 3 years. It's a bold move, Sherlock. I had no idea who to pick out of this. I debated so on Cap Friendly, you could pick some Russian guy who hasn't been in their system for like 10 years. So I almost picked him for the memes, but instead I chose Ryan Donato, who seemed like the only NHL caliber forward who is like still young enough. So that was my choice. What about you?
I picked Radim Šimik. He's a defenseman who's under contract for until 2024, so a little bit of a length there. Which out of especially out of the players that I picked, I believe he has one of the longer contracts. But even then, it's only like $2.25 million per year, so it's pretty manageable. He's a decent defenseman. He's not a necessary. He's definitely NHL caliber at least for the most part. I think he's a decent bet to take if you're San Jose. I think Donato's also a good option, but I went with Šimik because I wanted to fill out the defense with a couple more guaranteed contracts on my list.
When I was done, I needed to get one more forward, so I picked Donato. That was the logic behind my pick.
Donato was your last pick. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I went back in order because I was like, I looked at the Sharks list and I was like, they got nothing. So I had no idea what to pick.
Out there. Yeah.
Another team with a very particularly curious protection list and exposed list, the St. Louis Blues. Everybody in the hockey world knows Vlad Tarasenko is fucking done with the St. Louis Blues organization. The Blues were like, we're not even going to try and flip this guy or make a deal. See ya. They exposed him. I don't know if Seattle bites, personally. I think Vince Dunn's the real prize here. So that was my choice anyway, Vince Dunn. Surprise. RFA with our Brights, 24 years old, can play either side. Pretty decent for St. Louis in the past couple of years. That seems like the obvious choice, and I kind of wonder, is the Tarasenko thing just like a smokescreen? Like, hey, look at this top-line forward producer in the NHL.
Like, are they trying to take our
D?
Yeah, like trying to get you to take that. Yeah,
it's the only thing I can think of, but I don't know. Who was your choice here?
I also, just based on, I think the right call is also to take Vince Dunn. I took Vince Dunn. I want the Canucks to get Vince Dunn. I was hoping they might try and get a deal done for him before the roster freeze. I was hoping he might be part of one of the guys they pick up. But they didn't. I think the Kraken, the right decision would be to take Vince Dunn. But maybe there is a possibility that they could get, I don't think it's necessarily the wrong idea to potentially take a risk on Vladimir Tarasenko. I think he could be pretty good. And I think as far as like another case where if you're talking about you want the star power, the star name here, Tarasenko's still got star name on him.
It just depends also what like the doctors say, like, because if they say like his shoulder's toast, then that $7 million or $7.5 is going to be impossible to move.
Yeah, this could be a case where the potentially they could get Dunn and Tarasenko if the Blues are that desperate to get rid of him, which would be which if the Kraken can get that done. Like, can they convince the Blues that to retain some salary on Tarasenko to get rid of the brunt of his cap hit, and also get Vince Dunn out of that transaction? Because that would be a great move for them.
Yeah.
But if they're only getting one, Dunn is the call on my end. I think you're going to see a better forward, especially in the next group here.
Yeah. So Tampa Bay Lightning. The only move they made on trade deadline number 2, they traded Barclay Goodrow's RFA rights to a team that has been huffing paint for the last couple weeks. They're one of the other 3 teams that decided to go 8 forwards and D and a 1 goalie. They protected Kucherov, Stamkos, Point, Cirelli, Hedman, McDonough, Sergachev, and Cernak, and Vasilevsky. I was a bit surprised they protected McDonough, to be completely honest.
That is a bit of an odd one.
Based on the way like the post-cup kind of went, they really made it seem like McDonough was like crying and celebrating because he knew he was gone. Or like he was going to be exposed. It was very strange, but they have so many good pieces here to expose that I think kind of like the Vince Dunn Tarasenko thing. I wonder if they look at Ross Colton and say like Mitchell Stevens or Matthew Joseph, Cal Foote, and they say, hey, Seattle, we will give you 3 or 2 of these pieces if you take Tyler Johnson and you leave us Palat and Yanni Gourde. Because otherwise, I chose Yanni Gourde for my team because that kid is a fucking star. And if he's on top billing with Eberle on one side and Calle Yarncroke on his other, that is going to be a dynamic ass first line.
Yeah, I also took Yanni Gourde because he was so good in the playoffs. He's been so good for such a long time. My first line right now, as it's written right now, would be Gourde centering Van Riemsdyk and Josh Bailey. Like cool. That's an
unreal first line.
That's a great first line. That's Hockey Ultimate Team first line.
Yeah,
most of the time, most nights. Like that's a good group. I don't think there's any. I think some of the there are definitely some good prospects available on this list for the Lightning that the Kraken could be interested in. But I don't think they're worth what Yanni Gourde could bring to your team right now.
Yeah, it's tough to pass up Yanni Gourde, right?
The immediate impact and that Yanni Gourde will bring you in terms of wins and being able to make you a formidable opponent in the Pacific Division at the start of the year. Because I think if they didn't take Yanni Gourde, that would be a very silly thing to do. I think he's like to have a guy of that caliber fall right into your lap who's under contract till 2025. You can't pass that up. There's no way the Lightning could offer you anything possible that makes that worth it.
I will say they could also really hold Tampa Bay hostage here and say, we're going to take the youngest, cheapest forward who is still waiver exempt, and you guys are going to have to still figure out your cap situation for next year. Or we can take Alex Killorn or the most expensive forward, Tyler Johnson, but you're going to have to also chip in Matthew Joseph for free. You could really hold them hostage, right? Like use their own cap issues against them to be like, we value Yanni Gourde, but what's more valuable is youth. So we want Ross Colton, and good luck with your cap issues.
Yeah,
they could do that too. I don't know if Ron Francis is that ruthless, but
it could.
I say that at the same time, acknowledging like Yanni Gourde is so impossible to pass up. If, like you said, if you turn down the opportunity for Yanni Gourde right now at only $5 million in a brand new expansion team, that's a big.
I don't think there was any center this good when the Knights went to pick at the expansion draft as good as Yanni Gourde. There were some good players. Clearly there were some good players in that group. And some players that were undervalued. Yes, like William Karlsson being one of them, Jonathan Marchessault being undervalued, Riley Smith being undervalued enough to get traded to go
Eric
with
Haula.
Eric Haula, lots of them. There's a lot. We could go down the list, but I don't think there's any player that has been as clearly good and a slam dunk pick at center that Yanni Gourde is right now. I think you'd be crazy to pass him up.
Okay, that brings us to, speaking of tough centers to pass up, we now get to the Toronto Maple Leafs, who acquired Jared McCann for Philip Hallander in a 7th-round pick. They were the last team to go
and
8 forward Ds and a goalie. And then they exposed him and Kerfoot. I think they're banking on teams undervaluing McCann just as much as Pittsburgh did and Florida, and they're banking on maybe they pick up Kerfoot for the experience. But
who did they protect over? But my question is,
so they protected
because obviously Matthews,
Tavares, Marner, Nylander, and then 4 defensemen, which I thought was shocking.
That is weird.
They protected Muzzin, Riley, TJ Brody, and Justin Hall, which
Justin
in my mind,
Hall is the odd one out there. They're the other everything up to that point. I was like, okay, yes. What? No.
Yeah.
Why do you Justin Hall?
Yeah.
I don't think you had any worry about losing Justin Hall.
Yeah.
And
bit of a bizarre protection list here.
I would argue they didn't even protect the most. They didn't even, if they were going to take a 4th defenseman, I would have even argued that Travis Dermott was a better protection than more worth protecting than Justin Hall. But
I took McCann in this one. This is like a shoe-in.
I also took McCann. I think Kerfoot is okay. I think he's good.
He'd be fine 3rd or 4th line center.
He's a good center. And probably, but I think Jared McCann is very undervalued, and it's how much of that might be the fault of the Canucks and talking about the character,
talking about his character, maybe you never know, right?
Which for all we know could still be a thing. It could be still a thing that we don't know. I've heard it. Supposedly, he's gotten.
Apparently, he's had interviews where he's being traded at such a young age caused him to take a look in the mirror and resort his priorities. So,
which is, hey,
maybe that never would have happened.
Good for him. But I think skill wise, I think it's if we're talking exclusively about what his skills are on the ice. Pittsburgh, he was very good with the Penguins. They were crazy. It's nuts that he even got traded to Toronto at all, and it's kind of nuts that the Leafs left him exposed. I think the Kraken are going to take him at another Canuck to their roster to try and kickstart a rivalry here.
Although we will say, before we move on to the Vancouver Canucks, the Kerfoot pick might have been spoiled by some guy who was videotaping the Seattle Kraken filming their videos for the expansion draft at the Pike Place Market. Really funny stuff, all the fish memes that came out of it.
The fish toss.
Yeah, the fish toss is very funny.
Have you ever been to Seattle to see the fish toss? It is actually very cool. People were kind of being like, this is stupid and cheesy. It's actually, if you've been, it's kind of cool. It's a kind of cool thing. This is a very Seattle thing. I enjoy that aspect.
I went to Seattle once and for whatever reason, I didn't go into the downtown core. I stuck to the outside or whatever. And I was but anyway.
Yeah.
I
love downtown Seattle. It's incredible. It's great.
I know. I kind of hope when the borders open, go down there or something.
Oh yeah, we're going to see a game at some point, my dude.
The next team, your Vancouver Canucks, they dealt a 3rd-round pick, acquired Jason Dickinson, and suddenly their protection list looked marginally better. It looks a lot better than the
last one.
Yeah, it's still probably the most pathetic defense protection list I've ever seen. You're protecting Tyler Myers, a guy who doesn't want to be here anymore, and a guy who's probably
It's very pathetic. To be fair, Quinn Hughes was exempt. So
of course.
If you had to protect Quinn Hughes, it would probably immediately it does look better. But it is not great. I think Harmon Dial posted the last one, the original, which is very funny to look at now because let's see, I think I can cut off heart. Jacob Markstrom, Eric Goodbranson, Alex Edler, Chris Tanev, the Sedins, Bo Horvat, and I think Brandon Sutter was the last one.
So bad.
Oops. Not a outside of Bo Horvat,
I think Jonathan Dolan was even on that protection list too, because they would have acquired him at the deadline for Burrows.
I think he was.
Yeah, so he would have been exempt.
Enough.
Yeah.
So like, if you look at the list of guys they could have picked from, like the Knights had to pick from, it was literally, it was Reed Boucher, it was like Joseph Cramoroso, it was Chaput, Megna. There was some guy named Tom Nilsson who I'm like, I don't even remember this guy. Who is this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was literally Anton Rodin. Remember Anton Rodin? He was also there. I think Ryan Miller was available as well, but it was very clear that the Knights were going to go after Marc-Andre Fleury. He was kind of the one worry, but and then they ended up taking Lucas Spiza, which was very much a thank God they took Lucas Spiza. Thank God. He was the one player that they really could have taken, really. But I was very concerned they were going to take Miller instead, and it was going to be, we're going to have to deal with Spiza again. They ended up taking the right guy. This year, this is an interesting one, and I have an article coming out tomorrow about the expansion draft and why I think they're leaning here. So there are two different directions the Kraken can go here. One is Braden Holtby. Holtby is, he's only got 1 year left on his deal. He very clearly had it underperformed in Vancouver. He had his worst year stats wise as an NHL goalie with the Canucks last year. And is making $4.3 million, which is a lot of money. But he does have name recognition. He's won a cup. He was a regular all-star. He's got name recognition, and that could be very well interesting to the Kraken, especially as a potentially cheaper version of Carey Price, a cheaper, less risky version of Carey Price because he's only 1 year. The other is Cole Lind. Cole Lind is, he's probably not gonna make the Kraken right out of the gate, but he is definitely a decent young player. Could present a good option as far as we're not worried about necessarily losing him to waivers or something, or having him as a 13th forward. He probably didn't play enough this year, which is kind of the Canucks taxi squad reasoning. It's not great. But there are two different directions the Kraken could go here. One where they feel like there's enough different goaltenders available to take that they don't, and they say they favor Price over Holtby kind of thing, just from the what he's done for me lately kind of situation. So who did you pick?
I picked Gadjevich, actually, purely because he's waiver exempt.
That is
because because Lind isn't waiver exempt, so you're basically hoping he
hoping the Canucks don't take him back right away. Can they? They can do that, can they? They can totally do that.
Well, they could, but they'd have to put him in their lineup, which assumes he's capable of playing in the Canucks. I mean, he might.
I mean,
but it's
come on,
we're looking at like a pretty decent NHL roster of forwards, right? Lind is going to be in tough to crack an NHL lineup. So it doesn't even make sense for his development to be a 13th forward. No, you can't send him on waivers. So you're going to probably lose him to like a team like the Senators or Detroit. So there's no real advantage gained. Gadjevich probably isn't anything, but he's waiver exempt. So if he gives you a couple games, whatever. If he doesn't, then great. You have a trade asset to some guy who values size and strength, like maybe Brian Burke or whatever. Otherwise, my other logic was, if not Gadjevich, there is probably a side deal where the Canucks pay the Kraken to take Roussel or Beagle, because their deals aren't that expensive.
Very different direction. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like, that's the only thing I can think of. They either lose Gadjevich because of the waiver exemption, Holtby because of goalie reasons, or they pay them to take Roussel or Beagle because they're still cheap enough and there's only like 1 year left on the deal. But it's about whether, like, what that cost is going to be. Regardless, Seattle isn't getting fucking anything valuable from the Canucks.
I think Daniel Wagner posted that it's like, it's all right, time to pick from the Canucks, and Ron Francis just like, pass. You can't pass. Can I pick the Sedins? No, they've retired. Oh. And I was looking, I was like, it's like Ron. Hey, look at this. There's Arturs. That's Arturs Urbe. Pick him. I played with him in Carolina. He might still be okay. Pick him. Nope, that's Arturs Sailovs. Yeah. He's
different kid.
You can't pick him. Yeah, you can't pick him. Different Latvian. I picked Holtby. I think they're going to take Holtby.
I figured you would.
I think they're going to take Holtby. I think the Canucks don't actually. Well, I think the Canucks will might make a deal to like have them take Holtby and get his.
It could be the same thing with my logic with the Roussel people thing.
Right.
They might be like, we'll retain 25% and we'll give you, I don't know, Madison Bowie for Holtby.
Yeah. I think Canucks management still values Beagle and Roussel. So I don't think they want to get rid of them.
Fair.
I think they're going to take Holtby. I think if you're the Kraken, you're much better off than instead of taking Carey Price for 5 more years at $10.5 million, you're much better off taking the 1-year flyer on Braden Holtby, who costs $6 million less. And if he doesn't work, there are lots of other goalies who you're going to take as well with him that will be just as good right away next year. Like, you don't even have to worry about it. It's an immediate, well, it didn't work. Capo Kakinen's turn to take the net, I guess. So
goalie by committee, right? So
goalie by committee, and if you are looking at it at all from the we want the merch things, blah blah blah. Holtby will sell you some T-shirts. Like, come on, like he will. He's still got a lot of name recognition. He won a damn cup. Like he'll get there. Now, the one thing I wanted to ask you before we get into the last couple teams, do you see any situation where they maybe instead go for Alex Edler and sign him as a UFA?
I don't think it's worth it. Unless they discovered he had interest in signing in Seattle
for a lot cheaper,
I just look at based on the list of defensemen that I've picked up through an expansion draft, I'm not exactly going out of my way to sign a 37-year-old defenseman. Right. Personally, right? Like if I can get it's different that there's Mark Giordano, who's been like a proven elite defenseman at his age. Like he's been a late bloomer his entire career. And Edler, who was just struggling year over year.
But apparently had decent advanced stats. I had a bounce back in advanced stats, which
it was the 3-year weighted metrics, right? And those stats don't really account for,
they don't count for the one season where it finally falls off the rails a little bit. Yes.
Correct. And I don't know if it really accounts for quality of on ice line mates, but it might. But anyways, that's a much longer conversation.
For a different
I don't think they go for him in summary, but
I think you're right. I think you're right. If they want an older guy, if they want an older defenseman with experience, then you'd be better off taking Giordano instead. Yeah. If you absolutely feel that's a must for you.
Yeah. On the note of Washington Capitals goaltenders, though, the Washington Capitals exposed Vitek Vanacek in their exemption list, which I thought was very interesting.
Yes. So the guy they chose over him to protect was Ilya Samsonov, who
had a rough year.
He had a very rough year. That's an understatement. COVID twice, I believe. I think he got COVID, or at least he was on COVID protocol twice. He might have not actually had it twice. He definitely had it once, and he talked about it and how much it absolutely took a toll in his body and how awful it was. He talked about that. But Samsonov, you might also remember a little infamously after game 3 in Boston, gave up the puck in OT, and you could see Alex Ovechkin just ripping into him on his way to the locker room. Not a great one. Now I picked Alex Ovechkin. I think that would be you. You know what? Here's the thing. Seattle would be silly not to just call him up and say, "Hey, are you interested in coming here?" Like even if there's literally no chance in hell he does, and there isn't, you'd be crazy not to just be like, "Hey, maybe Seattle." You'd be silly not to just at least worth a shot, right?
Yeah.
Give him one call.
Shot,
you never
right?
know.
This is the one time you can shoot your shot. So
this is the one time you will ever get to get Alex Ovechkin right now. So why not give him a call? He'll definitely say no. But
so who did you pick then?
Oh, Vanacek. Easy. Okay. This is the thing also that's interesting about Vanacek is he's waivers exempt, which is I got them mixed up. Kakinen is the waivers exempt guy.
Okay.
Which means in theory next year you could have a 2 goalie system of Capo Kakinen and Vitek Vanacek if you so chose. I think it's more likely that they pick both of them and one of them gets immediately flipped somewhere else for a good haul of of other things. Sure. But in theory, you could have both of those goalies right now. I think again, if they're if they're signing Drieger like we expect, either way, those 3 goalies are gonna be is gonna be such a tandem to mess that you will a great goalie by committee group easily, and you get to choose between Vanacek and Kakinen. You get time to choose because one of them is waivers accept. You don't have to trade them instantly if you don't want to.
Yeah.
You can keep all 3 of them and you'll
a sum, that's for sure.
Yeah. You can keep all 3 of them and decide later if you want to. That's the great position they're in with the goaltending department. Again, why I don't think they should take Price. Yeah. You are so much better off taking Vitek Vanacek, Capo Kakinen, and Chris Drieger, and maybe Braden Holtby in there as well, if you want. That's a great group of goaltenders.
Because I didn't realize you couldn't do the 50% and then flip them back to the team you drafted them from, I would probably swap out Carey Price for Vitek Vanacek and then change Carey Price to Brett Kulak like you did. But as it stands right now, my current list has Brendan Dillon as the pickup from Washington, purely because I think he's got really good value on that contract, and I think that really solidifies your left side, like Giordano, Ghost Bear, and Dillon on my team, with Shattenkirk, Stetcher, and whoever of Carrick, Dunn, Kukan, Lausanne, or whatever. That's a pretty decent decor.
Your defense is much more immediately solid than mine is. Mine is a lot more built on expecting the young committee and also expecting the young guys to step up into a new role kind of thing. So yeah, you're not wrong on that. Brendan Dillon was my initial pick on the idea that Vitek Vanacek was not going to be available. But as soon as I saw that, I was like, he was, and I'm like, I can find another Brendan Dillon somewhere. Vitek Vanacek is an immediate take. I think Dillon is not a bad call either. I don't think that's. I think Vanacek is the clear choice to make now, but based on original thinking, Brendan Dillon is a good pick as well.
Okay, then our last team, we're finally here. Team 31, the Winnipeg Jets. No moves, which is unsurprising for Kevin Cheveldayoff. Mason Appleton, a surefire top 6 forward on the Seattle Kraken, or Dylan DeMello, a guy who would be probably the Kraken's #1 shutdown right shot defenseman. They really didn't have much. Their protection list prioritized Logan Stanley over DeMello because of big boy things and draft pedigree. I disagree with it, frankly. But such is life. I chose Mason Appleton just to appease Thomas Drance. But for real, Mason Appleton is was one of the Jets' best forwards last year. Underrated player, just very tenacious, great goal scoring rates, really solid in playoffs too. Easy pick for me. But
remember when the Jets had Patrick Laine? God, that would be that'd be really wouldn't that be helpful right about now? I went Mason Appleton as well, mainly because Drance keeps saying how great he is, and
it's just coded in your brain.
Yeah, Dylan DeMello is also if they chose
it was a tough choice
over Appleton, I wouldn't say that was a terrible call. At all, but Appleton is probably. I think Appleton, the upside on Appleton, especially considering he's an RFA. Whereas DeMello, I believe, would be a UFA pretty quick out of the chute after. I think that's worth more. I think that'd be worth more. Oh, I guess he is under contract till 2024. He's got years. He's got years ahead of him, DeMello. But I think you can get some. I think you'll get more good long-term future out of Mason Appleton.
Yeah, in my thought process too, I was looking at my right side of my defense, and I was like, if I get DeMello, who's going to be the odd man out between Shattenkirk and Stetcher, and I didn't want to do that to Stetcher. So
I would see my odd man out would immediately be Shattenkirk just because he's older. But you never know. But yeah, I see what you're.
Oh, sorry. Also, Vince Dunn was in that equation too. So it'd be between Dunn, Stetcher, and Shattenkirk, and then DeMello. And Stetcher'd probably be the odd man out because he's the smallest.
Yeah, because right now my top 6 defensemen is Nudavara. It's Nudavara, Shimmick, Kulak, Stetcher, and Dunn. I imagine is in that list as well, and then maybe like Jake McCabe, and then you're like your 7th being like Jake Bean or Connor Clifton or something. Yeah. So I kind of like where that's sitting. I think
we'll post the pictures of our lineups, folks, and then you guys can vote on who won the draft. Yeah. And we will decide who's the best between the two of us. But that will come on Twitter. The last thing we want to get into quickly, we wanted to extend our congratulations to Luke Prokop, the Infinity Blocker for
hell yeah.
I guess the
whole summer.
All the gems are kind of like a rainbow, so this actually works pretty well.
Yeah.
So congrats to Nashville Predators defenseman, the 6'4" right shot defenseman for the Calgary Hitmen last year. He was their assistant captain. Production wasn't that great, but like whatever. Signed a 3-year ELC with Nashville in December of 2020. He became the first player to come out of the closet. Big shout out to him. He had a wonderful statement that I will read to you right now. Hi, everyone. While the past year and a half has been crazy, it has also given me the chance to find my true self. I am no longer scared to hide who I am. Today, I'm proud to publicly tell everyone that I am gay. It has been quite the journey to get to this point in my life, but I could not be happier with my decision to come out. From a young age, I have dreamed of being an NHL player, and I believe that living my authentic life will allow me to bring my whole self to the rink and improve my chances of fulfilling my dreams. I wouldn't be able to do this without my amazing family, friends, and agents who have known this about me and met me with love and support every step of the way. I hope that in sharing who I am can help other people see that gay people are welcome in the hockey community as we work to make sure that hockey truly is for everyone. I may be new to the community, but I am eager to learn about the strong and resilient people who came before me and paved the way so that I could be more comfortable today. This is just the beginning of my journey, and I'm excited to see where it takes me, both in hockey and in life. Thank you. From Luke Prokop. Luke Prokop. It takes an incredible amount of bravery in today's world to come out at all, let alone as a 19-year-old pro athlete signed to a contract to a team in a sport that is so dominated by toxic masculinity. The outpouring of support from fellow NHL players, GMs, media members in hockey, just letting him know that he was cared for and they were rooting for his success was honestly the best part about Monday.
Yeah.
Always great to start the week with like some happiness. I urge anyone listening to this to check out the 31 Thoughts podcast that basically was just Luke Prokop telling. I feel like I'm always saying it wrong.
No, you're saying it correct every time.
I know, but every time I feel like I'm saying it wrong. I feel like I'm missing a syllable. But listen to that 31 Thoughts episode. It's really wonderful. He's super open and candid about it and what brought it on. Incredible bravery.
He is clear. He is clearly a leader on any that you want on any team. Like that's level of maturity and toughness is something that not everybody has. Like his bravery is incredible. This has been a thing in hockey for a long time. Is the fact that we've never had an openly gay NHL player, and frankly, we're not there yet because he just signed a contract. He's not even, he hasn't played a game yet. So that's
he's on his path, but
he's on the path to. But as of this far, like no openly gay NHL player has ever stepped foot on the ice, and there's obviously kind of reasons for that because of the way that the sports culture has been built and cultivated over the last century. There's a lot of reasons why that is. And it's really great to see the tides changing on that. And it's great to see Luke Prokop become the first person to do it, because the fact being the first, it's always the hardest to be the first one. That's always the most difficult. just because of how much risk you run in terms of like, this is a guy who's literally unfortunately puts his career, sometimes might be putting his career at risk just by saying this and anything, because some people who aren't thinking as like proactively and as like progressively will see this as some sort of a bad thing, even though it isn't. It's not a bad thing in any way, shape, or form. It should, if anything, this is like whenever hockey teams talk about character, this is the kind of guy they should be talking about. This is character. This is actual character, true leadership, and a brave human being that you would want playing alongside you at any point. You want in your corner, you want on your team, you want on your bench, you want him in your locker room, because he's going to be an absolutely great person for that, and for cultivating a good group of players, of good people to win championships and to win games. So yeah, Luke Prokop, like all love and support to you, man. And yeah, it was good to see a lot of NHLers like coming out and saying that they support this, and hopefully like backing up those actions later on. Like obviously words are, actions speak louder than words. Like anybody can say they support. It's good you want to see them act on that as well in the way that they handle both off the ice, away from the rink as well. But it was very good. Like you can tell, like some of the guys we saw out there doing their due diligence to say that this is a big deal and that this matters to them. Like those are all players that you're looking at and you're saying like, it's good to like it's good to see players putting themselves on the good list and showing that they can act, that this matters to them, because sometimes you worry. So it's good to see some players.
It's always good to see that some players can be human beings and actually kind of nice sometimes.
Jason Dickinson was one of them, and now
Jason Dickinson was one of them. Took a knee during a game, so yeah. These
are players that not to make this about Jason Dickinson at all, but like those are the kind like that. That's character. You want players with character on your team. We're seeing it with Luke Prokop, and we're going to see it hopefully with more players as they hopefully welcome him properly into the NHL.
Yeah, so Luke Prokop, the CreaseCast supports you. If you want to support the CreaseCast, though, you can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, all that stuff. Make sure, if you like a visual medium, you can check out our YouTube channel where I got a giant hole in my shirt, but, we kind of dress up and, like, take care of ourselves.
I wore my Kraken shirt today.
Fans.
Yeah, I wore my Kraken shirt.
But yeah, drop us some reviews, drop us some likes, drop us some comments. We love to read those as well. You can also join our Patreon. We have $1 and $5 tiers available to you for exclusive content and even more written stuff from Lachlan Irvine himself, and eventually more YouTube videos as well. I am Cody Severson. You can follow me on Instagram. Or no, you can't follow me on Instagram. Don't follow me there. I'm never going to let you allow. Follow me on Twitter at Cody Severson. My website is commentsharvest.com. Make sure to bookmark it now before I change the name, because that is going to come soon enough. Lachlan, where can the fine fans find yourself?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and TikTok sometimes. I haven't done as much TikTok lately, but you can find me there at Lach and the Crease. You can also find my writing work at lachandthecrease.com. I have your Canucks expansion draft primer coming out tomorrow. Some of the stuff that you've already it's kind of the same stuff that you heard in this episode, but maybe in like a little bit more of a written form. And with maybe a little bit more time, like a little bit more stuff on Jason Dickinson as well, the newest member of the Canucks. So keep a lookout for that'll be in on your Twitter feed, on your social media feeds this morning, as well as the show. So go check that out.
Brilliant. Thanks everybody for tuning in to this episode. We hope you loved it. Make sure you share it with your friends, and we will catch you guys at the end of the week when we start talking about the draft, which happens Friday. The actual draft in the same week. There's too much content. It's insanity. Thanks for checking this episode out, guys. We will catch you guys on the flippity flip. Bye.
Release the Kraken.